Hey everybody, Steve here. Morning latte, gotta love it. From The Varied Life, you can check out the channels on YouTube, hit a like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. And since we retired here in Korea, wife and I, we sold everything, threw stuff in a couple of suitcases, and boom, we're retired here in Korea. There's some ups and downs when you retire in any overseas location, and Korea is not exempt from that. For those of you who don't know, there's a whole doctor strike going on here in Korea, and unfortunately, it is leaving a lot of people in the lurch and a trail of dead bodies, unfortunately. I have never seen anything like this. Now, for those of you who don't know, Korea is kind of small. It's about 51, 52 million people. They have about 140,000 doctors, and the majority of the care that is given is overseen or done by resident doctors, which is around 10,000. They do their residency in 100 hospitals throughout Korea, and the majority of them are in Seoul, and they get paid like $3,000 a month. And as soon as they finish their residency in whatever specialty they have, they end up making about, $200,000 a year. Should be noted that being a doctor in Korea is one of the highest paid positions in the peninsula. So the resident doctors and the doctors union, the Korean Medical Association, has gone on strike before in the past for a number of reasons. You might think, well, maybe we're not getting paid enough, and maybe work conditions and so on and so forth. And really, those are secondary issues. The main thing that the doctors union has gone on strike about multiple times in the past is more doctors. Yeah, and now with the 10,000 or so resident doctors who turned in their resignation slips, and now the senior doctors and the professors, the teaching doctors at these teaching hospitals are saying they're going to go on strike, I think sometime in March, for the fact that the government wants to open up medical school to more students so they'll have more doctors, because the doctors are complaining that they're overworked. Now, how overworked are they? They are really, really overworked. They are seeing about 100, 150 patients a day. They're working 100, 120, 160 hours a day, according to the different reports that you read. They also do 36-hour shifts. That is insane. In the United States, resident doctors will do 24-hour shifts, but here in Korea, it's even worse with 36-hour shifts. It is just absolutely insane. And with the aging population comes more appointments. Because you get old, you break down, you need more appointments. And the way that the Korean medical system is designed and how it is, 90% of the hospitals are for-profit hospitals. So keep that in mind. 90% are for-profit hospitals. So when these doctors are striking against the government wanting to add 2,000 more doctors, these, the doctors union and these senior doctors and these people that are on strike are saying, oh, too many doctors is going to crash our medical system. And it's like, let's put this into perspective. And I've said this before. You have 2,000 new residents or new medical school students that will become residents, that will become doctors. The doctors union has gone on strike and has refused to increase the number of doctors in Korea for the last 27 years. Matter of fact, there's times in history where they've even wanted to reduce the number of doctors. Now, why do they want to reduce the number of doctors? Why do they not want doctors? Because they say, and this is from a spokesman for the doctors union, saying there would be too much competition. It would lessen the prestige of the current doctors, as if there is some quantity. There's only a certain amount of prestige that you can hand out, and if people get less, it's less, and that it would ruin their pay. Really? 100 teaching hospitals, 2,000 students, do the math. You look at what, 15, 20 different departments in a hospital. So each department might get 1 or 2 extra doctors. Seriously, you're hanging your hat on saying that one or two doctors extra in a department in a residency program will destroy and crash the medical system. That is absolutely insane. Now, I can see where 2,000 more medical students might be a burden upon the medical schools, and there's multiple medical schools in Korea. So it's not like there's only one medical school. There's multiple. So it seems like they can add those number of students. If not, maybe the government can kind of subsidize and go to the medical schools and say, hey, we realize this is a big influx of medical school students, so we're going to subsidize so you can build and expand, accommodate these new medical school students so that way we can get more doctors for our aging population, which is about 20% of the population and growing. I don't know if you young people are, well, if you're young, you're not old, and so you don't know what I'm talking about. But as you get old, you need a lot of appointments. And the way the system here in Korea is that they don't have general practitioners. So when I was in the United States, I would have some mental health meds, I'd have some pain meds, some stomach meds, this med, that med, from all areas of my body. Your body just breaks down, and I've been rode hard and put away wet. So I would go to my GP, and if these were medications that I would be on probably for the rest of my life, the doctor says, okay, well, here's your prescription for 90 days. We'll see you in 90 days. And in the United States, now what you can do is you can get refills, a number of refills, so you don't even have to go in the hospital. So I don't have one here, but if I had a bottle, let's say this is a medication that I have, and I have 90 days worth of that medication, then what ends up down at the bottom is the number of refills. Normally, for me, my experience is I could get 3 refills of that medication. So I only have to go to the hospital once for 90 days, and then I can call in and get another refill for another 90 days. So in other words, I could probably get a year's worth of medication, close to it, by making a couple of phone calls and then go and picking up my medication or having it mailed to my address. Kind of alleviates seeing a bunch of specialists, and that's what you have to do in Korea. So no GPs in Korea. So for me to get mental health, stomach, back, pain, whatever meds that I have, if I have 5 medications that I need refills, I have to make 5 appointments, to see each of those doctors, and then each of those doctors will give me a refill prescription for 30 days. And then I have to go make another appointment the next month for another 30 days. They don't have 90-day refills. They don't have refills to where you're done with your 90 days. You can call in and get your refills. They don't do that. So you wonder why you're being overworked? Well, you're forcing people to come back to the hospitals to make multiple appointments with these doctors just to get refills on medication. And oh, did I mention they were 90% of profit-driven hospitals, privately owned? How do you make money? Maybe the more times people come into the hospital, the more money you make. So we don't want general practitioners because we want to make that money. And every 30 days, you're going to have to come in. And with the aging population, we're going to make a ton of money. So the hospitals are making a ton of money as this demographic gets older, but they're not adding more doctors to the mix. Doctors are complaining of the horrible work hours and the work conditions that they have. And it's like, well, then why are you protesting and striking against the government's mandate for 2,000 more doctors? That doesn't make sense. You should be striking against the hospital because the privately owned hospital, the for-profit hospital pays you. The for-profit hospital deals with the working conditions. The Korean Medical Association sets up this system that seems to be working in conjunction with the for-profit hospitals to drive as many people to get as many appointments as possible so they can make as much money as possible. But we're not going to pay the doctors. We're going to overwork them until they're working 36-hour shifts, 100, 120, 160, 180 hours a week. And we're only going to pay them $3,000 a month as they're a resident. For the life of me, I cannot find the last time that residents got a pay increase. I'm going to have to ask my wife, but I can't find it anywhere. Now, if you haven't been paid in a while, then yeah, you should get a pay increase. So I agree with that. Work conditions, long hours. But the doctors union is saying absolutely it will crash the system if you add all of these doctors, which equates to one or two more doctors per department. Yeah, that dog don't hunt. So anyway, we have some new information on what's going on, and South Korean doctor strike. Government moves to suspend thousands of medical licenses. And there's about 10 or 12,000 doctors that have gone on strike, turned in their letters of resignation saying they've quit. However, the for-profit hospital has got all these letters, and they're like, we've got all these resignations here, and well, let's just put them off to the side, and we're not going to say anything. That's essentially what they're doing. So they're the ones that the doctors should be striking against that deal with their pay and their working conditions, and the KMA, which sets up how hospitals are run by not doing GPs and, just forcing tons of people into a system with multiple unnecessary appointments, is causing the overwork, and they don't want more doctors. So anyway, the government has said, hey, this is a national emergency and it is affecting the life, and it is a critical thing. There's a law in the books here in Korea that if it affects the national health of Korea, the government can order doctors back to work. It is just a thing there, okay? The Hippocratic Oath, you got to treat, it's... If you're a barista or, you do some other job, forcing people to work, no, that's not a good thing. However, as a doctor is not the same as a barista, a service person, any other type of job, because you're dealing with people's lives. And you swore to the Hippocratic Oath to put their interests first. And again, we're not striking against the for-profit hospitals in which they work for. They're saying that the government is, So anyway, the government said, hey, you need to come back, and we'll give you some time, and if you don't come back, we're going to start suspending some licenses. And now the health ministry has put into motion procedures to 4,900 striking doctors could lose their licenses if they defy the order to return to work. This is basically a 3-month suspension, which is very interesting because if you're going through residency in the United States or here in Korea or other places, if you miss that amount of time, you have to redo that year of residency. Yeah, that sucks. Nobody wants to redo a year of residency. And it's, that's crazy. But yet these resident doctors are all saying, we're standing in solidarity, we blah, 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 work conditions, no pay, and we don't want more doctors. The doctors union says that is non-negotiable. And what's interesting is we have confirmational bias from the doctors union because they say, they say they don't need any more doctors because the birth rate here in Korea is extremely low. So people are knocking boots and having babies, and so we don't need more doctors. But they're totally ignoring, which is absolutely true, but totally ignoring the ever-increasing aging population, which is driving more people to go to the hospital. Doesn't really make sense. Again, confirmational bias. They're only looking at the things that support their cause, and they're totally ignoring and burying their heads in the sand when it deals with the aging population and their own numbers that show that doctors are seeing over 100 patients a day. That the time that a doctor spends with a patient, think about it, when you go see a doctor in the United States, 5, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, somewhere around there, 10 to 20 minutes, depending. Here in Korea, it's like 3 or 4 minutes per patient. Yeah, it's that bad. So anyway, now, out of all of these striking doctors, which is almost 12,000, makes up 93% of the trainee workforce, claimed the recruitment of 2,000 additional students a year from 2025 will compromise the quality of services. Instead, they called for improvements to pay and conditions. This is the thing that gets my goat. This thing right here, because the for-profit hospital deals with their pay. The for-profit hospitals have a direct impact on their working conditions, but they're not striking against the working conditions. They're striking, or the for-profit hospitals, they're striking against the government is calling for more students. It says, how will one or two more doctors compromise the quality of services when you are being overworked and working 36-hour shifts? Many doctors are working 6-7 days a week. That dog don't hunt. I just don't see that. So you're saying, so for resident doctors and senior doctors, supervisors that are currently working in hospitals, or that were currently working in hospitals before the strike, offer quality service, but having more people go through medical school, and we're not talking about lowering the standards, keeping the standards the same. You have college students going to medical school, they graduate, then they go into residency program. How is that a compromise of quality of service if you go through the exact same training as these people did here? That doesn't hunt. That dog don't hunt. That doesn't make any sense. And again, it's kind of crazy. Excuse me. It's kind of crazy that the doctors union is saying stuff like this. And again, the prestige. Oh, it'll lower the prestige. It will create competition and it will lessen our pay. And it's like the for-profit hospital deals with your pay. And so apparently the for-profit hospital and how they pay their doctors is put in such a way that there's a small amount of money going to the doctors. Well, of course, it's for profit. They're going to pay as little as possible to the doctors and nurses and staff and janitors that work in the hospital so they can maximize their profits. These people are striking against the wrong. They shouldn't be striking against the government. They should be striking against the hospital. And it's lunacy to say that if you had one or two doctors in the departments of teaching hospitals, and there's 100 teaching hospitals, that will compromise the quality of service. Yeah, that's that's just totally bogus. Now, this week, the government health ministry said it would assign 20 military surgeons and 138 public health doctors to boost staff numbers at selected hospital, but denied that the country's health services had descended into chaos. It is a high priority, but it's not into the chaos levels. But now, it's going even further. In an attempt to resolve the dispute, the government last week announced that they want to improve pay and conditions for training doctors, as well as a review of continuous 36-hour shifts, a key grievance among junior medics or doctors. But the concessions have failed to placate the doctors. Again, it's the organization itself that is putting them in the way that they made this so that they can get the max amount of appointments into these hospitals with the least amount of expense to the for-profit hospitals to keep them in the black and out of the red. It just doesn't make sense. People's patience is wearing thin. The exit from this quagmire must be found through dialogue between the two sides. Now, it's interesting because there has been surveys done, and it was like in the 60%, then it got up to 70, 74. Now it's like 83% of the Korean people in surveys say, hey, this is unacceptable. To go on strike, and people are dying. People are not getting life-saving emergency surgeries. They're not getting chemo treatments. We're having people die of cardiac arrest because they're not admitted to hospitals because the doctors are on strike. People are dying because of this strike and people going against their Hippocratic oath. And it's just so bad. Now the medical professors, this is Seoul National University, which is one of the big five hospitals, teaching hospitals, warn that they may resign if the government doesn't move to resolve the healthcare crisis by March 18th. Now, for those of you who don't know, medical professors, you think of a professor teaching in medical school, that's all they do? No. Many medical professors are actually doctors in teaching hospitals that supervise a plethora of resident doctors. So they're kind of the oversight and the accountability to make sure that the residents are doing the right thing. They resign, there's no oversight, and there's no one to pick up the slack, and it's going to put the Korean people and people like myself, thankfully I'm not sick or need emergency services, but this is putting more people in danger if they do this. And this is crazy. The government is wanting more doctors, and that's what they want to do. They want to rehab the system. They said in other accounts and in articles saying that they're going to inject $7.4 million into the medical system to revamp it. They promised to do the pay. They promised to do kind of like pay increases for departments that aren't being filled, like pediatrics, emergency services, or doctors in rural and smaller cities, things like that. But now these professors are saying, hey, now we're going to jump on the bandwagon. And said, we've decided to submit our resignations on March 18th unless the government takes steps to a sincere and reasonable proposal for resolving this situation. Here's the thing. Out of the doctors' union, they say that they will not compromise. They will not negotiate on the issue of adding more doctors. They will not negotiate. That is non-negotiable. Then there's the pay. There's the working conditions, which we pointed out is mainly directed towards the for-profit hospitals. But it doesn't make sense. And now they said, unless there's a sincere and reasonable proposal, but the problem is that the doctors' unions and their spokespeople and the whole nine yards, we watch a bunch of news clips and here on TV and online and so on and so forth, read a ton of articles. Not once have I seen the doctors' union say, this is what we want to alleviate the overburden of too much work. This is what we want for pay. This is what we want for working conditions. This is what we want for the change in the medical system itself to make it run more efficient or effectively, to deal with the aging population. Zero. We get nothing. It's the same old song and dance. Oh, it's going to ruin our prestige. Oh, it's going to create too much competition. Oh, it's going to destroy our medical system by adding one or two doctors per department. Seriously? Really? Come on, guys. And the thing that gets me is the mass amount of people that walked off the job. And if they get fired, do you think that the Korean Medical Association and the Doctors Union is going to have their back when you get fired and you have student loans that you got to pay off, your license is suspended, and because they can suspend it for 3 months, but they can also do lifetime suspensions in severity. There's even prison time. There's even $22,000 fines for this. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But let's say worst case scenario, you get fired as a resident doctor or even a senior doctor, a professor, medical professional, and you lose your license for good. Where are you going to work? Do you think the doctors union is going to take care of you? They're going to pay your college loans, how much does it cost to go to medical school? In the United States, you're looking, $250,000 up to $500,000 or more, depending on the prestige of the medical school that you go to. So let's just, say $400,000 or $500,000. What is the interest on that? Is the KMA going to, and all these people get fired and can't work? Do you think the KMA is going to say, oh, well, you stood in the gap you didn't bend a knee, you didn't bow to the tyrannical government that we're protesting against, for not wanting more doctors, and you got fired. Here, let us pay for your student loans. Here, let us pay for your mortgage and your house and your car and your food and your expenses. And here's a little extra, for helping us out. No, that will never happen. So this is a big game. Unfortunately, the Korean people are at risk and people are dying. There's more and more reports of people dying of not getting surgeries, not getting cancer treatments, cancer surgeries. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And the Korean people, the everyday working people, are being held hostage. The Korean government just wants more doctors to deal with the overwork. The doctors union says we're being so overworked, 100 plus hours a week, 3 to 4 minutes per patient, and 100 patients a day or more, or whatever, 160, 180 hours a week. It's just terrible, terrible, but we don't want more doctors. Now, back in 2014, the government said, hey, let's do telemedicine because that will alleviate having people come into the for-profit hospitals so many times. And the doctors union said, no, we don't want to do telemedicine because that would reduce the amount of profit that comes into, and these resignations. The meeting on Monday reported attended by 430 of the professors at SNU Medical School. So now, and the doctors union has their tentacles into the medical schools because about 46% of those going to medical school resigned and said, we're not coming back. Well, guess what? They have mandatory military service here in Korea, and if you're not going to medical school and you turned in your letter and say, yeah, I quit, it's time to be in the Army now. We're in the Army now, da-da-da-da-da, yay! Mandatory military service for 18 months, and guess what? And they're still going to have to pay some student loans off. You get kicked out of medical school, you're still responsible for your student loans. You're going to do 18 months in the military, and then where are you going to be? You can't work in the medical system. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good thing. So I'm just amazed at what is going on and how the government is saying, hey, we're going to put military doctors, opening up military hospitals and putting into a lot of these for-profit hospitals to take up the slack so people stop dying because of the strike. Medical school students are boycotting their classes. The KMSA, the Korean Medical School Association, which represents bodies at 40 medical schools. 40 medical schools. So when you say 2,000 they want 2,000 more doctors, 2,000 more openings in medical school, divided by 40. So 50 students, 50 more students per medical school. Seriously, you can't handle 50 more? They say it's impossible. The doctors union says it's impossible. We have this thing called the internet. We have things where college now isn't where you go. There are some classes that you absolutely have to go to, like cadavers and other stuff. But a lot of classes are now being streamed over the air and the internet, and you can sit in the comfort of your home and attend your college classes. But we can't accommodate 50 more. The goal, in a related story, the Korean Health and Medical Workers Union patient advocacy groups launched a nationwide petition on Monday calling for doctors to return to work. And it is crazy on what is going on. So with this whole thing in the doctor strike, now we're getting the senior doctors and medical professors that are teaching at these medical schools are saying that they're going to go on strike at one medical school in one teaching hospital. But that is spreading quickly, and I just don't get it. The thing that bothers me the most is we don't see anything from the doctors union saying, hey, here's a workable plan, here's why we don't want more doctors, and here's how we can make the working conditions better. Here's how. You never hear this. It's like they complain, oh, we don't want more doctors, it will crash the system and blah. And it's like, okay, well, tell me, okay, obviously you think there's a problem. What are the solutions? If you're not offering up a solution, there's no chance of negotiation. I haven't seen anything from the doctors union saying, hey, this is how we would like this to pan out from our point of view. Let's do this for the overwork. Let's do this for, the pay. Let's do this for the working conditions, which the hospitals in Korea, the big ones, the big five, I've been to Samsung Medical Center for my eye surgeries, and it is the best, cleanest, most professional staff hospital and care that I've ever gotten in my entire life. Because it's a for-profit hospital. They can afford to do all that, and they're making money hand over fist. But when you have a for-profit hospital and a system that is geared towards getting as many people to make as many appointments as possible and keep them returning every single month for things that are unnecessarily, they don't need to come back every single month, like in the prescription services and refills, I just don't see it. I agree that resident doctors should get paid more if they haven't had a pay raise in a long time. They should. They shouldn't be working 36-hour shifts. They shouldn't be working 100, 160, 180 hours a week, because now that's a medical liability, because when you're so fatigued, you make mistakes. But the union never says how are you going to deal with more appointments? And when your doctors now are only seeing patients at 3 minutes at a time, and they're seeing 100 plus patients a day, how do you alleviate that workflow, that overburden? Nothing. No possible solutions whatsoever. All they do is they stick to, we don't want more doctors. We'll create too much competition. It will ruin our pay. It will lessen our prestige. It destroy the medical system. No babies being born. We don't need more doctors. And then we'll just ignore the aging population. And it doesn't make sense. Especially when Korea is the lowest doctor to patient ratio of any developed nation in the world. The world. The entire globe. Korea, and then you have like Mexico and Turkey, or Turkey and Mexico. It's that they're bottom of the barrel when it comes to doctor-patient ratio. But the doctors union says, apparently that's not a problem. People are getting good quality care, but then they also on the other side, they claim they're being overworked, they're not being paid enough, but they're not striking against the for-profit hospitals in which they work for. Does the medical system need to be revamped? I absolutely think so. So I side on the side of the union for that, and maybe they should have kind of like general practitioners, primary care managers that can deal with that, and have 90-day prescriptions with multiple refills for medications that people are going to be on for the rest of their life. Why make people make appointments? Oh yeah, that's right, it's for profit, so we're not going to revamp the system, because the KMA, the doctors union, and the for-profit hospitals are joined together at the hip, and they don't want more doctors because that affects the bottom line. Yeah. I really, really wish, and the more I search information online about the doctors' unions and their point of view for the strike, I see no offered solutions. I see nothing but rhetoric. I definitely don't see how they never offer anything saying how they can lessen the workload. Pay is pay. Pay in for-profit hospital, I don't know. They want the government to get involved and start paying subsidies, to help with the pay, but they don't want more doctors. There are no workable solutions that I see from the doctors union. And the fact that the doctors union has such long reach into the medical schools themselves, and unfortunately, these medical school students, and in my opinion, these resident doctors, they're not looking at the long game. They're not looking at the long game. And if they get fired, the union is not going to have their back. And the people that are suffering are the Korean people. You got men, women, children, husband, wives, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, so on and so forth, that are dying because of this strike and people going against their Hippocratic oath. It's, I don't know. I really wish that the doctors union could put into words some possible solutions on how to deal with the things that they're striking against, but we never hear any of that. My wife's Korean, and she watches the news, and most of it's in Korean. I, scope and glean from the interwebs as best I can from Korean resources. I haven't found anything that outlines the Korean Doctors Union, KMA, Jimmy Hoffa type strike thing that's going on for any possible solutions. It's just rhetoric from what I see. Now, I would love, if anybody knows of anything, send me some links, send me some information. I would really love to get my hands on it to see both sides of the story. But when you say that too many doctors will crash the medical system, and in the grand scheme of things, you do the math, that equates to one or two extra resident doctors. I don't know. When my daughter's going through residency, one or two doctors would have been, it would have been great, because it would have lessened the load of everybody a little bit. And we're talking about doctors. I don't think people understand. Doctors have lives too. Residents have lives too. And residents get sick. And residents have times where, something happens and they can't go into work. And so now somebody has to backfill that. Having one or two extra doctors in a department as a resident would be great, because that would allow people, some wiggle room, some flexibility in scheduling and so on and so forth. Would it help with the massive overburden and overwork that we see? In the grand scheme of things, very, very little. But when the union says we absolutely don't want more doctors, and for the last 27 years they have rejected any call for any new doctors to deal with the crisis that we're seeing with this ever-aging population, it just sounds like rhetoric. And unfortunately, it's like 83% of the Korean people believe that what the government is doing and wants is right. And it's, there's people have died because of this strike, and family members, and it's going to get ugly. The interesting thing is that the for-profit hospitals, all quiet on the Western Front. It's almost like they don't want into this thing. Just leave us out. Just don't look at us. We deal with your pay, but don't look at us. Strike against the government. Don't look at us for working conditions, even though we have a direct impact on the working conditions because we're a privately funded hospital. Just go strike against the government. It is such an odd thing, and I haven't seen anything like this anywhere else in the world. It is absolutely crazy. So, like I said, this will probably go on for some time, and it is, what is it now? March 13th. So more people are looking to strike, but this is kind of like a big bluff game. Somebody's going to call the bluff, another person's going to bluff, and both sides are throwing the ball back and forth to see how far this goes. But the government is saying, hey, we're going to issue about 5,000 suspended licenses. That's the next big step. And where's this going to go? I don't know. I think it's going to go on for quite some time, because in previous articles and things that I've read, we talked about how the doctors union is saying, well, the government's only doing this and the union administration is only doing this for re-election and political purposes, which is in April. So this could go on until April, maybe shortly after. So you're looking a month and a half. How many people are going to die because of this strike and people going against their Hippocratic oath? And the system needs to be revamped. There can always be improvements to whatever system that is out there. There is no perfect system. But, the people are the ones that are paying the price. And what gets me is, it makes me wonder if you have resident doctors and their family members who need emergency surgery, who need cancer treatments, who need this or that are not being able to get it because of this strike and those people die, how is Thanksgiving dinner going to be? That's going to be really awkward. And it's called Chuseok here in Korea. So how is that Chuseok meal going to be when you have family members who died and you were a resident doctor who went on strike? And yeah, that will be insane. Now, one last thing that I want to leave you with is that there's even further reach of the KMA, because now there are people that have returned to work. Some resident doctors have returned to work. It is a very, very small percentage, but these people are being ostracized, and so now, because they went back to work, do you think, by the way, the doctors union, the Korean Medical Association, do you think that they would probably downrate or, performance reports, give somebody a bad performance report because they went back to work? Probably. Do you think that those resident doctors who came back and said, yeah, I know where my bread is buttered, and, they believe in the Hippocratic Oath, do you think that their future promotions might be in jeopardy because they returned to work? Because the KMA? And the doctors and the professors and the higher levels who are supporting the strike have a doctor that came back who doesn't support the strike. Do you think there could be some animosity, some unfair evaluations? Yeah, it's getting bad. So again, where is this going to go? And hopefully this will be squashed, but it doesn't look anytime soon. I think it would be good for Korea to at least look at an option. It's a crazy option, but look at getting doctors from other countries who don't get paid enough in their own country, but would get paid more here in Korea to be a doctor. Bring them in. Yeah, you might need some translator, and there would be some bumps in the road and so on and so forth, but at least you could get some people to help with people not dying and getting the surgeries and the help that they need and appreciate, but still the overwork is an issue. And the KMA, I just don't see any solutions whatsoever. It's just rhetoric right now. And I see these interviews of news people interviewing these union spokespeople and doctors and professors and senior doctors that support the strike. Not one of them offers any solutions. It's just the same thing. Blah, blah, blah. More doctors will destroy the medical system. More doctors will not help anything. It's going to lessen our prestige. Oh, it's going to make it too competitive. Oh, we're going to lose our pay because we have more doctors. It's the same shit every single time. Not once has anybody offered any workables or any solutions in any way, shape, or form. It's just rhetoric. So anyway, that's what we got going on. License being suspended. We'll see how that goes. What do you think? Would you be pissed off if you had a family member that went to a hospital, had a cardiac arrest, went to the hospital, was turned away because of a doctor strike, go to another hospital, turned away because of the doctor strike because they couldn't treat you, and did that 7 times and then eventually died because you couldn't? How would you feel about that? How would you feel if a family member that was getting stage 4 and stage 5 cancer treatment now can't get their treatments? Or kids, babies, young ones, younglings, children who can't get life-saving surgeries because of the doctor strike, and your family members die and pass away. Is that really the sword that you want to die on? Fall on your own sword? Hell be damned to all the people. No wonder 83% of the Korean people surveyed so far support the government's call to have more doctors, and they reject putting the Korean people themselves in danger by removing all of these resident doctors who give care to the Korean people. Again, it goes back to the Hippocratic Oath. Read up on the Hippocratic Oath. It is a very interesting oath that they make, which obviously they are not really They don't really care about it. It seems like a political type thing and a money-driven thing. That's why it kind of reminds me of the Jimmy Hoffa union days and so on and so forth. So anyway, put that in the comment section down below. I'd appreciate that. I got to finish my latte. I got to slam down my morning protein drink and hit the gym. So we're going to do that. But before you leave, hit like and subscribe on the channel. Retired in Korea stuff, living overseas, hobby, fitness, whatever. It's kind of a mishmash of stuff, but I would appreciate that. So anyway, we'll see you on the next video. Hopefully this will get better. Peace. Absolutely crushed.